Welcome to Bookish Mind Podcast, Season 4, Episode 9. In this episode, we explore how the people closest to you, the crowds around you, and the powerful above you silently sculpt your daily habits. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something pretty profound. This idea that your daily habits, well, they aren't entirely your own. They're shaped, kind of silently sculpted, by the people around you, your social world. And often you don't even notice it happening.
Exactly. And we're going to uncover some really surprising things about why we're so wired to, follow the herd.
Right, and maybe more importantly, how you can actually take this knowledge, this powerful, sometimes invisible force, and use it to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely.
We're actually going to kick things off today with a really remarkable story, a real-life experiment involving three sisters and the game of chess.
It's such a fascinating place to start because it really dramatically shows how normal isn't some fixed thing. It depends entirely on your environment.
Okay, so set the scene for us.
So our story starts back in 1965. There's this Hungarian man, Laszlo Polgar, and he had this, well, truly audacious belief.
Audacious how?
He was absolutely convinced that innate talent was basically a myth. He believed any child, literally any child, could become a genius in pretty much any field.
Wow, okay. Not born, but made.
Exactly. Through deliberate practice, through developing the right habits, his whole mantra was, a genius is not born, but is educated and trained.
That's a pretty bold claim, especially back then. And he was serious about testing it.
Oh, completely. So serious, he actually looked for a wife, Clara, who shared this belief. And she was a teacher, so she was already kind of invested in the power of instruction.
Okay, so they team up. What was the grand plan? What field did they choose for this genius experiment?
He picked chess, and he laid out this incredibly detailed plan to raise their kids, their future children, as chess prodigies.
Just decided, like that.
Pretty much. And the environment he set up for his daughters was just meticulously designed. They were going to be homeschooled, which was super rare then.
Right.
Their house, filled, absolutely filled, with the chess books, pictures of famous players. It was basically like a live-in chess academy.
I can almost picture it. Walls covered in chess diagrams. And I bet it wasn't just passive learning, right? They had to actively do it.
Oh, yeah. Constant competition. They had to meticulously track opponents, dedicate their whole lives to it, really. It was this intense, almost singular focus.
You got to wonder how that affected the kids.
Yeah.
That level of pressure. What were the results of this incredibly controlled environment?
The results were, frankly, astounding. Just completely off the charts. They had three daughters, Susan, Sophia, and Judith.
Right.
Susan, the oldest, starts playing at 4. Within 6 months, she's already beating adults.
6 months. Oh.
And Sophia, the middle child, she becomes a world champion by 14, grandmaster a few years later.
Incredible. And the youngest? Judith.
Judith was something else entirely, truly exceptional. She could beat her father, Laszlo, by the time she was 5.
5 years old. Beating the guy who designed the whole system?
Yep. By 12, she was the youngest player ever listed in the top 100 chess players globally. And then, at just 15 years and 4 months old, she becomes the youngest grandmaster of all time. Younger than Bobby Fischer.
Younger than Fischer. That's legendary status right there.
And she didn't stop. She went on to be the #1 ranked female player in the world for, get this, 27 years.
27 years. That's just dominance. But what's really striking, you mentioned earlier, despite this, super intense, very atypical childhood, the sisters actually liked it.
That's what's so remarkable. They described it as attractive, even enjoyable, entertaining, not some horrible grind.
Really? How so?
There's this great little story. Laszlo apparently found Sophia, the middle daughter, playing chess in the bathroom in the middle of the night.
In the bathroom?
Yeah. And when he told her, leave the pieces alone, go to sleep, she apparently replied, "Daddy, they won't leave me alone."
Huh. That says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't a chore, it was an obsession, but a welcome one.
Exactly. It really drives home the main point here. The Polgar sisters grew up in a culture, their family culture, that didn't just prioritize chess. It praised it, rewarded it, made it the central focus.
So in their world, being obsessed with chess wasn't weird. It was normal. It was attractive even.
Precisely. And that illustrates this fundamental principle we're talking about. Whatever habits are considered normal in your specific culture, those are going to be among the most attractive behaviors you'll find. You'll be drawn to them.
Which brings us to this idea of the seductive pull of social norms. Why do we conform so much?
Well, it's deep-seated. Humans are, fundamentally social creatures, herd animals, you could say.
Right.
We have this powerful evolutionary desire to fit in, to bond with others, to get approval from our peers. Think about our ancestors.
The lone wolf doesn't usually fare too well.
Exactly. The lone wolf often died, but the pack survived. Collaboration meant safety, better mating opportunities, more resources. It's basic survival instinct.
So this ancient wiring, this need to belong, it's still running the show, even in our modern lives, through these kind of invisible rules.
Absolutely. We don't usually sit down and consciously choose our very first habits, do we? We imitate. We copy what we see around us.
From family, friends.
Yep. Family, friends, our community, society at large. These social norms are like the unwritten rules guiding our behavior all the time.
And we often follow them without even thinking about it, without questioning them.
Totally. It reminds me of that quote by the philosopher Montaigne. He said something like, "The customs and practices of life and society sweep us along."
Sweep us along. I like that. We're not necessarily forced, but there's this strong current pulling us.
Exactly. And that means behaviors become really attractive when they help us belong, when they signal we're part of the group.
Like the Polgars in chess.
Right. Or, if all your coworkers wear expensive suits, suddenly that expensive suit seems like a pretty attractive purchase, doesn't it? It helps you fit in, sharing inside jokes, knowing the right things to say. It's all part of belonging.
Okay, so we're wired to conform. But who specifically are we conforming to? The sources mention we tend to imitate 3 specific groups.
That's right. And understanding these 3 groups gives you, the listener, a kind of roadmap for using this social tendency to your advantage to make good habits more appealing.
All right, let's break them down. Group number 1, the close, our family and friends.
Yeah, this one feels pretty intuitive, right? The people you spend the most time with, your immediate social circle, they have a massive influence. Just like your physical environment shapes you, so does your social one.
And it's often unconscious, you're saying. We just sort of absorb their ways.
We really do. You might pick up your parents' way of arguing, or maybe how your friends flirt, or even how your spouse always double-checks the lock.
I've definitely noticed myself adopting, like, the posture of someone I'm talking to or picking up weird phrases from roommates back in college.
Exactly. Or, you travel somewhere and find yourself unconsciously mimicking the local accent, even if you try not to. It just happens.
It's kind of like peer pressure, but quieter, more subtle. Is there actual research backing this up?
Oh, absolutely. The evidence is really compelling. There was this one huge study, tracked like 12,000 people for over 30 years.
Wow.
And it found a person's chance of becoming obese went up by 57% if they had a close friend who became obese during that time.
57%. That's
Yeah.
significant.
It really is. But look, this invisible pressure, it works both ways. It can be positive too.
Oh, so.
Another study showed that if one person in a relationship lost weight, their partner would also slim down about a third of the time. We really do soak up the habits, good and bad, of those around us.
Okay, so this peer pressure thing is real and powerful. How do we make it work for us, not against us? The source mentioned that astronaut Mike Massimino.
Yeah, the MIT story. He was in this robotics class, and out of 10 students, 4 ended up becoming astronauts.
Right. If your goal is space, that's the room you want to be in. So what's the practical strategy here for everyday habits?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. One of the most effective things you can do is to join a culture where your desired behavior is already the normal behavior.
Immerse yourself.
Exactly. When everyone around you is doing it daily, that new habit just seems achievable. Normal, even. If you hang out with fit people, working out regularly starts to feel like the default.
Makes sense. If you're surrounded by jazz lovers, playing jazz every day doesn't seem like some crazy outlier activity.
Precisely. Your culture sets your expectation for what's normal.
And the source suggests taking it even a step further. Join a culture where the behavior is normal, and you already have something else in common with the people there. That sounds like a booster rocket for habit change.
Yeah, it's a really powerful combination. Think about Steve Camm's nerd fitness community.
Right, for nerds, misfits, and mutants.
Exactly. He helps people get healthy who might feel totally out of place in a typical gym environment, but they connect over loving video games or Star Wars or whatever.
So that shared interest makes the health goal feel more attainable, like people like me do this.
Precisely. It transforms this lonely personal quest into a shared journey. It's not just I want to be a reader, it becomes we are readers.
That shift from I to we, that shared identity sounds crucial for making habits stick long term.
It really is. It reinforces your own personal identity. Which brings us neatly to the second group we imitate, the many, the tribe, the crowd.
Ah, yes, the power of the crowd.
Ah,
This makes me think of those classic psychology experiments.
you're probably thinking of the Asch conformity experiments, right? Solomon Asch back in the 1950s.
That's the one, with the lines on the cards.
Yeah. So picture this. You're a subject. You walk into a room with a bunch of other people who you think are also subjects, but they're actually actors.
Okay.
You're shown two cards. One has a single line. The second card has 3 lines of different lengths, labeled A, B, C. Your job. Just say which line on the second card matches the first card. Super simple.
Seems straightforward enough. Easy task.
And the first few rounds are easy. Everyone gives the obvious correct answer. But then comes the twist.
Here we go.
On a trial, when the answer is blindingly obvious, like line C is clearly the match, the actors, one by one, intentionally pick the wrong answer. Say they all pick A.
Oh, wow. So what happens to the actual subject, the one who's not in on it?
Well, first, total bewilderment. You see their eyes widen, maybe they laugh nervously, they start looking around at the others like, are you guys serious?
Yeah, I can imagine. Checking if they're seeing things right.
Exactly. And as more actors give the wrong answer, the subject gets more agitated. They start to physically squirm, double-check the cards, and eventually, they often start to doubt their own eyes.
And they give the wrong answer, even when they know it's wrong.
A lot of them did. They just gave the answer they knew deep down was incorrect, just to go along with the group.
That's genuinely unsettling. What were the overall numbers? How many people conformed?
It turned out that as the number of actors giving the wrong answer increased, so did the conformity. Once you had 3 or more actors doing it, the pressure became immense. By the end of the experiments, nearly 75% of the subjects had agreed with the group's incorrect answer at least once.
75%. That is huge.
Yeah.
It really shows that when we're unsure, even slightly, we instinctively look around and think, what's everyone else doing?
Absolutely. It's why we check Amazon reviews or Yelp or TripAdvisor, right? We want the social proof. We want to imitate what the many deem good or correct. Safety in numbers.
But there's a definite downside here, isn't there? This pull to conform can actually hold us back.
Oh, definitely. The normal behavior of the tribe, as the source puts it, often overpowers the desired behavior of the individual, even if the individual knows better.
Like that chimpanzee example.
Yeah, exactly. A chimp learns a clearly superior way to crack nuts in one group, then it moves to a new group that uses a much less effective method.
And the chimp just gives up the better way.
Yep. It abandons the superior technique just to blend in, to do it the way the new group does it, even though it's less efficient.
Wow. Humans aren't so different, are we? That internal pressure to just comply must be enormous.
It really is. Often the reward of being accepted by the group feels way more important than the reward of being right, or looking smart, or even being efficient.
So most days, we'd rather be wrong with the crowd than right by ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just easier, less friction.
It is. And that means going against the grain, challenging the tribe's norms with your habits. That requires real effort. It takes conscious work to override that default setting of wanting to belong.
So the bottom line is, if changing your habits means challenging the group, it feels unattractive, difficult. But if changing your habits helps you fit in with the group,
Then suddenly, change becomes very attractive, much, much easier to adopt and stick with.
it's a really key distinction. Which leads us to the third group we imitate, the powerful, people with status and prestige. Why this group?
Well, fundamentally, humans seek status. We pursue power, prestige, recognition, titles. It seems universal.
Is it just ego? Or something deeper?
It's likely deeper, rooted in evolution again. Historically, having higher status often meant better access to resources, greater safety, more mating opportunities. These aren't just trivial perks, they tie back to survival and reproduction.
Okay, so status equals advantage. How does that translate into imitating habits?
We're naturally drawn to behaviors that seem to earn respect, approval, admiration, basically, behaviors that signal status.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Think about the gym again. People admire the person who can do the really difficult stuff, like muscle-ups, or the musician who nails those complex chord progressions, or even parents whose kids are really accomplished. We see these things and they become attractive goals.
So once we feel like we fit in with the group, the next step is wanting to stand out positively.
Exactly. And one of the most common ways we try to gain status is by copying the behaviors of people who already have it, people we perceive as successful.
We imitate people we envy, essentially.
Yeah, that's a succinct way to put it, yeah. We replicate marketing strategies that worked for successful companies. We try the recipe from our favorite famous baker, We borrow storytelling techniques from writers we admire. We might even mimic our boss's communication style if we see it gets results.
It's emulation as a path to success. What about the other side of the coin? Are we also trying to avoid behaviors that might lower our status?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge motivator. We trim the hedges because we don't want to be that neighbor, the slob of the neighborhood, right?
Guilty as charged. Or cleaning the house frantically before certain people visit.
Exactly. We don't want to be judged negatively. We're constantly, often subconsciously asking, what will others think of me? And we adjust our actions based on the anticipated answer.
So if a behavior is likely to get us approval, respect, praise, signs of status, we find it inherently attractive.
Precisely. And this loops right back to the Polgar sisters, doesn't it?
How so?
Their intense chess habits remained attractive for decades. Why? Yes, the training was rigorous, but it was constantly reinforced by the culture they were in.
The praise from their parents.
Right, the accolades, eventually achieving the incredibly high status of grandmaster. All of that provided continuous reasons, continuous rewards for maintaining that extraordinary level of effort. The status reinforced the habit.
That ties it all together nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's maybe recap the big takeaways from this deep dive on how our social circles shape us.
Sure. So first off, the culture you live in, your family, your workplace, your community, it really sets the stage. It dictates which behaviors seem attractive and normal to you.
Right. And second, we tend to adopt the habits that get praised and approved of within our culture. This comes from that deep, deep desire we all have to fit in, to belong to the tribe.
Yeah. And we mainly do this by imitating three key groups. Number one, the crowd closes. Close our family and friends. Their influence is powerful because of proximity.
Number two, the crowd, the tribe. We look to them to figure out what's normal, especially when we're unsure.
And number three, the powerful, those with status and prestige. We copy them because we desire the success and respect they seem to have.
And a really practical strategy that comes out of this is, if you want to build a new habit, join a culture where that habit is the norm, and ideally where you already share some common ground with the people there. That makes it stick.
Definitely. And remember that pull of the tribe, its normal behavior is incredibly strong, often stronger than individual desires. Fitting in is a massive motivator. We'd usually rather be wrong with the crowd.
It takes effort to go against it. And finally, any behavior that earns us approval, respect, and praise, things that signal status, that behavior is going to feel naturally attractive to us.
That's the core of it.
So for everyone listening, maybe the final thought is this. Take a moment to consider the invisible rules that might be shaping your habits right now. Who are you actually spending your time with?
Yeah, what does normal look like in the different groups you belong to?
And thinking about all this, how could you maybe strategically place yourself in environments that make the habits you want feel not just easier, but genuinely attractive? What's one small shift you could make in your social world that might kickstart a big difference in what you do every day?